morning, everyone, and welcome back to NETGEAR's SMB webinar series. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rachel, and I'm your host today. We have a long-awaited presentation for you presented by NETGEAR's Senior Product Line Manager for Smart and Managed Switches, Laurent Mazia. He'll be talking about our new Modular 10G Ethernet switch. All right, take it away, Laurent.
Hey, Rachel, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. This is Laurent speaking from the old Europe today on the road, but we have a clear connection. Welcome to that strange modular 10 gig Ethernet switch thing. So we call that webinar Everything You Wanted to Know About Such a Modular 10 gig platform, because that's a real world first. That's a world only. But because it's a world first, you got to discover that. So I'm very happy to host that webinar. We will go through a few slides, and in half an hour from now, we should go over a live demo for the online configurator. So if you are ready, welcome to that webinar. As a very short introduction, why NETGEAR did envision such a modular high-density 10 gig switch platform. And well, you have the answer here. We really need more and more 10 gig connectivity because of servers and storage and virtualization in general and the new hyperconvergence trends. So because you need a lot more of 10 gig ports, the bigger the switches become, the better for those storage and server interconnects. At the core of each network, IP convergence, but also you'll be surprised, video over IP in general, voice over IP as well, and unified communications participate into that massive bandwidth at the edge of the network. So the only way to aggregate gigabit speeds from the edge is 10 gig and 40 gig maybe at the core. Also, multi-gig wireless with Wave 2 AC access points participate in that crisis. So 10 gig is really much needed to aggregate all these big data. So in general, 10 gigabit is good, but a resilient switch network with 10 gig is even better. That's why we at NETGEAR envisioned such a new modular 10 gig switch platform into the 4300 series that are by default very resilient, very redundant because of non-stop forwarding stacking. So welcome to the 4300 series in general and to that new switch in particular. As a quick refresh, we are going to talk about fully managed switch platforms right now. It means that you need to know 4100s are the standalone switches we got. 4200 is the multi-gig version we have for Wave 2 access points with a line rate platform with 2 10 gig uplinks and 8 2.5 gig ports for downlinks. And the 4300s are really much the top of the line for NETGEAR switches. They handle layer 2, layer 3, 1 gig, 10 gig, and now 40 gig in a resilient NSF stacking. At the top of that portfolio, you'll see the M6100, which is our real high-end modular chassis switch. Don't be confused. Today, we are going to speak about modular switching, not a more complex and costly, obviously, modular switch chassis. So 4300 series, if you're not very familiar with the 4300, you should. It's a big, nice family of 10 gig switches so far and 1 gig switches all stacking together. And now see at the bottom of that chart, the 96X. This is a new 2U modular switch platform that is joining this 4300 family. What's so special about the 4300s? Well, they are high-end, layer 3 switches. They stack. This is a stackable platform. And you know what differentiates the most a stackable platform from one another? This is the NSF, non-stop forwarding feature. It means that such a NSF stackable platform just can't stop, because one switch is the master, but something bad happens to the management unit, to the master switch immediately. In far less than 1 second, without real packet loss, there is the secondary master taking off and keeping the wall for layer 2 and layer 3 tables. So NSF means unstoppable stacking platform, which is good for resiliency when you can have these distributed link aggregations architectures for downlink or uplink. So far, 4300s were comprised of 10 gig half width, 10 gig full width, and 1 gig full width versions. We are very happy to announce today this new modular platform, M4396X. Here it is. So that's a 2U switch that will come absolutely empty, but there's 12 slots, 12 garages, so that you can insert those 8 port cards, so that you can build your very own solution from 8-port 10 gig copper to 8-port 10 gig fiber to 8-port 10 gig PoE, and even 2-port 40 gig modules. So that's a switch, but it's fundamentally a modular platform that is very, very unique. But what made the M4300 so successful so far was really much about the price point. Today, customers don't like to pay too much for 10 gigabit Ethernet, right? Especially for that third generation of 10 gig E platforms. So the real good price point on the market today is around $100 per port, sometimes far less for low-end standalone platforms, but really much around $100 per port for high-end layer 3 stackable platform with LACP. So this M4396X will be very successful because it will also retail for $100 per port as a starting price point. For your education, we made the count for last year, 2017, in North America, globally, but also across the big old Europe. And NETGEAR is still the leader for 10 gig switches shipments under the $10,000 bars in units. Why do we only look at switches shipping under the $10,000? Well, because we don't have any 10 gig switch platform above 10K, right? So we just ignore the big machines that go to data centers. And when we only observe the market share information from NPD and context analysts for North America and Europe, NETGEAR pretty much owns the mid-size and small 10 gig switch market with 61% market share, which is huge because you see that the other vendors probably focus on higher end platforms, but don't really address SMB market with $100 per port platforms or less. That's the main explanation. So before we see the new 96X, let me tell you a little bit about the first models in that 4300 line. We have 4 1 gigabit switches called 28G, 52G for non-PoE versions, and the PoE plus versions of these for 28 and 52G. Each PoE model comes with 2 SKU because we have a small one with a 500 watts PSU and a bigger version with a 1000 watts PSU, so that we can claim 4300's 1 gig series scaling up to the full provisioning for PoE plus, up to 1440 watts, for instance, for 48-port platforms. So these switches are excellent as 1 gig switches with 2 copper 10 gig ports and 2 10 gig fiber ports, so total 4 independent 10 gig uplinks that will be used both for uplinks or downlinks, but also for stacking across the entire family. Now, let's go to the 10 gig models. You see on the left all the previous best sellers we have, because that's booming right now, really. 10 gigabit is proliferating from the servers to the aggregation to the core, as we reviewed. So the 8x 8F, 12x 12F, and 24x 24F were originally the three first M4300 models in 2016 at launch. We since then welcomed the 24x and 48x, which were 24 and 48 port copper platforms only. And now let me introduce the M4396X. We were needing a higher capacity, higher port count for the 4300s for plentiful applications that we will review later. The M4396X will be, as soon as it ships in a couple of weeks from now, the very first modular 10G switch platform shipping empty and growing per multiples of 8 ports up to the 96 port count, or by multiples of 2 ports up to the 24 port 40 gig port count. So that's a major breakthrough, because so far all other costly data center class 96 port switch products out there coming from, the big vendors, Cisco, Arista, Brocade, or Juniper, were either fixed configuration, quite expensive because you need to pay for the full port count, right? 96 port of copper or fiber, or a little bit modular with 48 fixed ports and big fat 24 port modules for the second U, which is not very granular. So the 96X is very granular, very versatile. Let's review that. Before we jump onto the hardware platform, let me talk a little bit about the M4300 software, which we keep enhancing. I have a blue color on the middle column for ACLs. That's a very high-end layer 2, layer 3, layer 4 piece of software with time-based access control lists. It seems like nothing, right, when we read that, but time-based ACLs, it's even better than time-based PoE. You want to have a schedule in order to light up PoE on some ports in order to shut down cameras or access points during the night. I don't know. Well, this is something that we have standard across the board, across all NETGEAR product categories for PoE. But time-based access control is even, you're going further. You will then action access control list, ACL, to shut down a port itself so that there is no traffic permitted on the port, for instance, or doing some recategorization or re-forwarding operations based on the schedule, which is quite unique. This is really much unique in the NETGEAR portfolio. On the right-hand side, I want to just highlight a brand new feature that we came from the community. That's a great example how the NETGEAR community, this NETGEAR community forum can be exceptionally useful when it comes to new ideas, new features, complaints about the software. One of our customers said we really want to have reverting LACP for distributed link aggregation or lags, just trunks, ether channel, so that a LACP lag can revert to static, which is very much useful when you do servers, for instance. When there is a new server coming in without LACP, the switch can still work and detect that LACP is meeting, and the switch will automatically revert from LACP ether channel to static, so that only one port can be used, for instance, and immediately after, when LACP becomes available, you go back to the LACP mode on your trunks. So those two blue new features were actually claimed and requested by the community. We are very happy to deliver. I am here to say that the 4300 really at NETGEAR are the best software we have. This is really much the top of the line, both from a CLI and from a web UI GUI standpoint. From a table size, we are used to big numbers, for 40 gig, and so far we got those 24x, 24F and 48x full width models with 960 gigabit per second of switch fabric, backplane, line rate for 48 port bidirectional, right? So 48 port 10 gig in, ingress and 48 port 10 gig egress. Now with the 96X, that's even bigger numbers because this switch platform comes with a stunning 256K MAC addresses and table 1.92 terabits per second of a switch fabric. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because we make sure that this switch is capable of moving line rate, non-blocking 96 port of 10 gig Ethernet or 24 port of 40 gig, which is the case. The good news is that the rest of the table size is pretty similar to the other models, so that we allow for a seamless stacking when that big new switch will stack with 48 port 10 gig models, or even with the rest of the portfolio 1 gig models as well. So this is the M4300 preview. This is a 2U modular switch that will either ship empty on the right-hand side. You see the K0 ordering SKU number. This is the empty switch with the 12 blank covers on those front slots that spans horizontally across the front. And we have 2 modular slots for power supplies on the back. We'll also have a starter kit, so that instead of shipping empty, the switch will come with fiber port cards, 6 8-port SFP Plus fiber cards, so that we have 48 port fiber and 1 600-watt PSU as a starter kit when we have a fiber aggregation job, for instance. We are going to review all these components during the rest of this presentation. But as I said, you see already this versatility. We have copper fiber. We have, for first time at NETGEAR, and I believe in the industry for sure, in such a form factor, PoE over 10 gigabit Ethernet, PoE plus 30 watts per port up to the full provisioning state. That's why we have those 2 power supply. The 1200 watts PSU will be obviously good, preferred for PoE operation. The 2-port QSFP Plus module will be due later in Q2, that will ship in March, and will have QSFP Plus 40 gig, especially for servers, but also for high-speed interconnect, high-speed stacking available on that switch only. So this is the K0. Don't be afraid of all these new names and SKUs. We have a pretty good online configurator that will make it very easy. But for your understanding today, we are going to zoom on this XSM4396K0, because this is the empty switch that will be part of any starting configuration for sure with the 96X switch platform. The empty switch ships empty, obviously. You have 2 covers on the back for the first and second PSU bay, and you see you have 2 covers, blank covers for the 12 front slots. You can probably see the yellow color for the slot number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the top row for the first U. Yellow color usually indicate PoE capability across the board for NETGEAR switches. So we use that yellow color to indicate that the 6 top slots are capable of delivering PoE power. So the bottom slots, the second U, is not capable of PoE power, right? So this switch will only deliver power to the top slots. So 8 times 6 slots, it's 48 ports PoE plus capability. Obviously, if we have another PoE port card that will insert at the bottom of that switch in slot number 7, 8 up to slot 12, that's not a big issue, but this module will just behave as a non-PoE module, just doing 10 gig base T and no PoE. So the empty switch is going to ship empty without power supply. The second version, the other way for procurement, will be the 96X K1 SKU, ordering SKU. So the XSM 4396 K1 is nothing else than a starter kit. The big carton the big box will show the anti-switch and those port card modules and that PSU in their own packaging shipping in the big box. So the K1 is a 48-port fiber starter kits. Why is that? Well, because you must have noticed that we didn't have a 48-port 10 gig SFP plus fiber switch in the 4300 line. So that was a good occasion to fill that spot for 48-port SFP plus. But the big difference here with 48-port of fiber is that you have a lot of room for growth, right? There's a lot of headroom because you still have 6 open slots for future growth. So 48 ports SFP plus, it's actually 6 port cards called APM48F and 6 empty slots. The power supplies on the top left that will be shipping in that starter kit is the 600 PSU. This 600 watts PSU is capable of delivering power up to the 12 slots altogether for 12-volt switch operation without any limitation. But obviously, there's not much left for PoE operation. That's why we have the 1200 watts that will be preferred when we need additional power for PoE. I hope it makes sense. Let me now tell you about those port cards. We worked so hard in order to have a very cool, tiny, compact form factor. Again, that's a real world-only, world-first offering. The first one is the APM48F. Price-wise, well, you'll see it's already live in distribution. The way this platform has been priced is that when we use the starter kit, for instance, with fiber, or when we go empty, go shopping for the power supply on the right-hand side, the 600 watts, and when we populate all 12 slots with 8-port SFP plus so that we get to that 96-port count, 96-port fiber, the overall net price, street price, the expected retail price will be exactly $9,600. So 9,600 divided by 96, that's exactly $100 per port. This is the least expensive, the most cost-effective 10 gig modular or fixed switch platform on the market today. So obviously fiber is the least expensive option. Now we have 10 gig base T, very well priced as well, $700 for 8-port copper. You see the other SKU that we have, APM48P, that's the copper port card, the same one actually, but with that daughter card on top, which adds PoE capability on top of the 10 gig base T. Both APM48C and APM48P are not only capable of 10 gig base T and 1 gig, obviously, but also fast Ethernet, 2.5 gig and 5 gig. That's 5-speed Ethernet, ranging from fast Ethernet to 1 gig to 2.5 to 5 gig to 10 gig, depending on your wiring. This switch can revert to multi-gigabit 802.3BZ operation on Cat5, for instance, across 100-meter run. 10 gig base TPE plus, we talked about that. That's only 48 port capability, so only 6 modules in slot ranging from 1 to slot 6 will be capable of delivering PoE to those models. The APM402XL is a NETGEAR first 40 gig module, port card with 2 QSFP plus that can be used either with QSFP plus transceivers, fiber optics, or direct attach cable, breakout cables, right? So that one port gives you 4 SFP plus copper SFP plus connectors. So this will ship a little bit later in May. And on the right-hand side, I just want to finish with the 1200 watts big PSU. This 1200 watts power supply is capable of powering the entire switch, but on top of that, delivering 720 watts of PoE power per unit, so that when you have both PSU slots equipped, when you have 2 APS 1200 watts in the same switch, you go up to the 1440 watts PoE power, 30 watts PSC, 30 watts full provisioning across the entire 48 ports. Okay, so what are we going to do with such a modular switch platform? Well, what you can see here is the original legacy 4300 applications. That's where this 4300 line of switches is very successful on the market today. Building one, first application, top of rack. Obviously, we started with these half-width models. As we say, two redundant top of rack switches. It's much better than one single weight of single point of failure unique top of rack switch, right? So instead of going with a fat big switch, we just go with two half-width models that can be stacked and placed together in the same U with the stacking kit, so that you can have very short, modest size installations with two redundant top of rack switches using the good old LACP connections for all servers and storage underneath. That's the first application, servers. The second application will not be quite relevant for the 96.10 switch, the good, PoE operation at the edge. Instead of managing, deploying, configuring, maintaining a lot of PoE switches at the edge of a campus or K-12 network, you may want to stack those switches so that you have one logical unit that is unstoppable, because you will make sure that both the master management unit at the top and the second backup management unit are used for LACP connections, either to servers, downlinks, or up to your core in aggregation to your core. Much better if you have a LACP redundant type of connections at your core as well. So the second application, the PoE deployment, that will not change. That usually require 1 gig switches there. The building 3 is the third example. That will be spot on for the 96X, because the 4300 series, surprisingly, 2 years after launch, well, are still the only one switches in the world capable of replicating the spine and leaf topology that you can find in data centers for Hadoop operations, for instance, for small and medium businesses with a very easy to configure, very easy to maintain stacking technology, right? So we can use, for instance, two 10 gig switches that we will consider as spine, and we will obviously pre-set them for being master management unit and backup management unit. And from there, you can dual home up to 4, 5, or 6 1 gig switches, the leaf switches that will be connected in aggregation to those spine switches. One link on the first 10 gig switch, another link on the second 10 gig switch. You can double it to go 2 and 2 up to 4 10 gig links and form a high performance, highly redundant spine and leaf architecture. The goal here is not only resiliency and redundancy, but it's also a high-speed interconnect, right? Because you can go up to the line rate stacking topology, given we can use up to 4 10 gig links per 1 gig models in order to have 4 10 gig up and 40 gig, 40 ports in from clients, hosts, or server. So spine and leaf is really interesting for collapsed core installations or mid-size networks, high-performance networks, and there for the 10 gig spine, the 96X is going to provide, well, way more 10 gig connectivity, so that we can have way more servers and other hosts directly on the spine. Okay. So I talked about the server installation. This is an example here with 2 half-width switches, but I took that example on purpose, right? That's the first use case for 4300s. That's very important. I would say nowadays, that's kind of criminal if we just attach Hyper-V, hypervisors, or virtualized environments, or hyperconvergence, even more architectures, to only one switch. It's a single point of failure. Don't do that. We should just calibrate the network so that on the same U, for instance, for a small size installation, we have 2 redundant switches instead that will pair together using the provided stacking links, and so that all your servers just connect to 2 switches using LACP. We have hashing algorithms. We have 7 of them so that you can accommodate to layer 2, layer 3 IP address source destination, or layer 4 TCP UDP ports in order to have the perfect hashing that will adapt to any possible server or storage application. So that's what we do with half-width small models, right? But what if you have a larger installation? Now we can scale, right? Because just imagine you have 2 full racks with 20, 30, and maybe even 40 hosts or pieces of equipment. Now we can consider a dual rack installation like this one with 96 ports of line rate 10 gig at the top of each rack. We can dual home every single server so that a server will connect to the first switch on the first rack and go to the second switch for a high-speed, highly redundant LACP connection. So 96X, very first application, obviously, we are going to target those larger server installations. When we need more 10 gig connectivity with 48 ports, when you have a full 42U racks, well, you may be short, right? Quite fast on each rack. Now with 96 port count capability, we can handle those larger installations. Hitless failover, non-stop forwarding is the main feature that will differentiate a high-end Cisco Catalyst 3850, for instance, a platform from any other Catalyst platform. And that's why we have the exact same sub-second NSF feature that allows for 0 packet loss and absolutely unstoppable server operation when every single server is dual homed using LACP in such a topology. Okay, so we talked about the servers. Now let's review the spine and leaf. Well, as I said, spine and leaf is, very common in data centers nowadays, but the 4300s are the only one that can replicate this topology with the 2 spine 10 gig switches and 1 gig switches underneath, so that you have every single 1 gig switch connecting to both 10 gig spine switches. So in such a case, we have this 8 switch total stack height, right? The limitations we have remain the same, that there's absolutely no new rule for the 96X new modular switch platform. Everything you knew before about 4300s remain true, but now with 96X new switch at the spine, you can have even more 10 gig connectivity, available 10 gig ports, available 10 gig or 40 gig connectivity for your host and other servers, or maybe anything else in your collapse core installations. New 10 gig connectivity available for larger installations, right? So we still have 16 ports of 10 gig or 40 gig per switch that are capable of stacking mode, right? So all these switches ship from the factory with the Ethernet mode on all ports, but you can allocate up to 16 ports per 10 gig switch to the stacking mode. That remains the same for the 96X, but obviously you'll get way more available 10 gig connectivity at the spine for everything else. So now I want to tell you a little bit about ProAV. Not sure if you have ProAV system integrators or consultants or resellers in the call today, but the 4300s found, I would say, a brand new vertical. We are very successful with the SDVoE, Software-Defined Video over Ethernet Alliance on the market. We just introduced the 96X switch last week at ISC, this big AV show held in Amsterdam, Netherlands last week. And why? Because with SDVoE technology, we can transport 4K 60, 4x4x4, uncompressed video, almost uncompressed video, for sure without any noticeable latency, because that's inferior to 0.1 milliseconds, even when you take those giant 4K streams, 4 by 4 by 4, 4K 60 through 10 gig Ethernet. So SDVoE technology is the only one technology in the market today for video over IP, leveraging the 10 gig Ethernet backbone, right? Every single other AV over IP, and I can tell you there's 100,000 maybe of other AV over IP technologies out there with MGPEG, with the H.264, name it, for compression with super high latency, with a lot of degradation in terms of quality. Well, SDVoE is the only one with 10 gig, and that's good because this technology requires cost-effective but robust line rate 10 gig switches. And now you know that NETGEAR really owns this market, this spot, right, for $100 or less 10 gig switch platform. And obviously for Pro AV, the 96X platform is pretty good. So that's not the main topic for that call today, but I really wanted to spend some time on it because that will help me explain how good such a modular 10 gig switch platform can be, right? Because, well, so far we said it's good for density. We can have a lot of 10 gig connectivity. Okay, so what? Now, let me tell you, and we are going to use the AV over IP example, and you will probably be able to transpose that to every single other possible application that you can do with 10 gig good switches like that. Come with me. This design, which again ships as an empty switch, we call it a card frame design, for instance, and those 8-port modules for 10 gig, right? 8-port modules for 10 gig copper or fiber, really, that lets you be lot cost effective, really cost effective when it comes to a modest size installation, right? Because you may not need the full port count, you may not need the full 96 port count right now, but for sure, when we go with the fixed port configuration, in that case, should we go with 16 or 24 or even 48 port configuration? Well, we have a fixed configuration with less headroom. Here, now we can start very small, still being very cost effective. You saw the pricing, $4,000 is pretty much the ticket for starting the empty switch, and then we go with those $400 or $600 port cards. That gives us a fantastic low cost, high density, but that really gives us a lot of headroom. So that's the first example. We can start small with a very small AV installation. Now bear with me. This installation can grow, and many installers in the AV segment are obsessed by, future-proof, obsessed by, future growth, by headroom, and that should be the rule, by the way, for any other applications. Remember, the server applications, we can have more and more servers in the future. We can have more and more storage units. So we should be able to scale, and such a modular switch platform allows for a lot more scale. So here we are going to add some more port card modules, very cost-effective port card modules, and add copper and fiber density in order to allow for future growth. Now, for sure, we will then, if necessary, for the future, we have a 96-port 10 gig capacity so that we can fill those last couple empty garages and get to that 96 port. And for that sake of this application, you may have symmetric, right? 48 port for sources, 48 port for your displays, but asymmetric solutions are supported, obviously, because the beauty of video over IP is that it's not like a fixed circuit-based matrix switchers, right? It's 10 gig Ethernet multicast is bidirectional, and you can have any kind of combination. So I hope that with this example, I was quite successful explaining how good such a modular platform can be when it comes to headroom. We have a lot of headroom. So please use the chat box so that we can answer your question at the end of that webinar. We have 5 minutes left before the QA session. So please go ahead and ask any question you'd like. using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So it's time for me to do the live demo. The 96X 4396X switch platform is now live in distribution everywhere in the world. You just go to netgear.com/M43, netgear.com/M43. That will give you the entire family, and specifically, you will then find all the documentation and collaterals for the 96X. There is one link, one good link, really good link under the resources tab called the online configurator. www.netgear.com/96-config. So let me demonstrate that to you right now. I'm going to take my Firefox browser, and let's review this real quick. www.netgear.com/96-config. So that brings you to the online M4300 configurator. I told you there's no need of remembering all these new SKUs. The good news also is that you can use your mobile phone or your tablet. This online configurator can scale from the small, tiny phones to the larger phones, to the larger tablets, up to the full screen view. So you have two ways of using such a configurator. You can answer those questions. How many 10G copper ports do you want as a start? Well, you know, maybe I would like to have 16 ports. And how many 10G fiber ports? You always need fiber, right, to go in aggregation to your core, or maybe because you have higher end server grade installations with 10G fiber, SFP+. Well, I also want 16 ports. And then you just need to answer the questions. Do you need power supply redundancy? Yes, no, so that when you add a second PSU, you have a 1+1 PSU protection, right? So that's the first way of using such a configurator. Let's add some more QSFP+, because you have a brand new server that just shipped as a replacement, and now you have headroom for 40 gig as well. You have QSFP+, and the modules are not locked, right? So you can confidently use the optics or the DAC cables that will be on the compatibility list for your servers. That's well open on the QSFP+ 40 gig module at NETGEAR. So that's the first way of using it. Now you can also manually go onto a slot and say, well, that's not this one that I wanted actually. I want to have another port card. And that thing is dynamic. You can design your solution. You can start from an empty slot and choose a port card for it. This configurator is intelligent, so it knows that you can only deliver PoE at the top. Should I want to have some PoE, that will go at the top directly, and you will switch to that 1200 watts power supply, because that's what you want. You want PoE budget, right, to deliver 56 volt additional power on the top of the 12 volt switch operation. Let me remove the power supply redundancy, because your customer actually doesn't want that now. When you're done with your configuration, you can scroll down. You have the key metrics: how many 10 gig copper, how many 10 gig PoE, 10 gig fiber, what is my total port count, also what is my PoE budget in my given configuration right now based on my PSU count. And then at the bottom of that page, by scrolling down, you will find the bill of materials, the BOM, that will, based on your location, North America, Europe, or Asia Pacific, because you have other power codes in some other regions, that will give you the exact BOM list. The good news is that you can either download this as a PDF, so that this PDF file downloads on your phone, depending if you have iPhone or Android. This is slightly different, but you end up with that PDF file on your phone. And this PDF is actually just a nice, very good looking screenshot of that configurator with your bill of materials ready to go to your distributor, for instance, to get a quote. But some people like me actually really prefer Excel. Right? I don't know why, it's hard to explain, but with Excel, I can do calculations. I can do plenty of things. I'm going to download this as a Excel file. My Excel window is opening on the other screen, obviously. Let me bring that up to you. And you have this BOM ready to go by email, or you can do your calculations on Excel. So we hope we simplified this 96X configuration. Go for it, 96-config, netgear.com/96-config. It's live on any phone or tablet or a website right now. Okay, I hope this was a useful presentation for you. I hope now you know why we at NETGEAR envisioned this world first 96-port 10 gig or 24-port 40 gig, including PoE modular platform. That's a world first. We hope you will like it. That will ship at the very end of March, but you can book all units right now. Everything is live in distribution at most of our partners already. The NETGEAR products are very famous on this market now for SMB, but also for professional audiovisual applications because they are reliable. You know, the lifetime warranty is really much a lifetime warranty for the life of the products, and even after the EOL, the only limitation is, you know, it goes to the first buyer only, and it's affordable. I told you, $100 per port. That's the starting point. That's a stunning price point for such a high-end, high-density platform, and that's easy to use. Not only because we have, you know, all the functionality across the entire line in the CLI with Cisco-compliant commands, but especially because the web interface, the GUI, is fully functional, which is absolutely not true at any of any other big IT vendors that ship those kind of big platforms. So the fully functional GUI makes it easy, obviously, because if you don't know the Cisco syntax, if you don't really know how to use those commands for trunk ports or access ports, that's much easier to do on a web interface. Okay, thank you for your attention. That's the end of today's webinar. Let's go over the switch question. Maybe Rachel, you want to take the lead?
Thank you so much, Laurent. That was a wonderful presentation. All right, we have one question from Gary. He's asking if there's some sort of overall kit, a not for resale one, that you'll be offering to resellers to be able to experiment with this modular switch.
Oh, yes, that's a great idea, Gary. So as soon as this switch is shipping, yes, I'm pretty sure that in North America and major regions, theaters in the world, we will add this 96X switch platform to the list of NFR, not for resale, so that you can have, you know, this ability to order one demo unit for your own needs at a stunning price, which is practically the production cost for us vendors. So yes, the answer is yes, we'll make sure. You may know that now 4300s, you need to be in this 4300 approval program list, because we really want to protect our customer pricing and margin. So we now have a dedicated advanced switching program. So please reach out to your NETGEAR sales team or powershift@netgear.com in order to enter into this authorization program so that you can enjoy as fast as possible this wonderful 96X switch platform.
All right, hopefully that answered your question, Gary. It doesn't look like we have any more questions at the current moment, but don't worry, if you guys come up with a question later after this webinar is finished, feel free to email me or Laurent, and we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful night, evening, or morning. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.